if you have a client that is haggling over very small amounts of fees early in the project, it might be a very difficult process throughout the project.
Business of Architecture, episode 203.
Hello, I'm Enoch Sears, and this is the podcast for architects, where you'll discover tips, strategies, and secrets for running a profitable and impactful architecture practice. I'd like to invite you to discover how to double your architecture firm income and create your dream practice of freedom and impact by downloading my free 4-part architecture firm profit map. As a podcast listener, you can get instant access by going to freearchitectgift.com. Today's podcast is sponsored by AIA Advantage partner BQE Software, the makers of ArchiOffice. ArchiOffice is the only office and project management software designed specifically for architects. It helps you manage people and projects while you focus on designing great architecture. So whether you're working remotely or on-site, ArchiOffice allows you to monitor the status of your projects and tasks and send out invoices in an accurate and timely manner. Get your fully functional 15-day trial of ArchiOffice by going to businessafarchitecture.com/demo.
Good afternoon. This is Ryan Willard with the Business of Architecture. I'm here with Alasdair Dixon and Siri Zanelli from the Collective Works. Hi, guys.
Good afternoon, Ryan.
It's excellent to be here with you. Now, Siri and Alasdair are partners of Collective Works, which is a unique design company, a multidisciplinary network of design professionals who've got their fingers in all sorts of different creative projects, ranging from graphic design, architecture. You've just recently done a new app called The Architect Quote, and it's a really kind of unique company structure that's, you know, quite fascinating, that really benefits and brings a broad range of experience to any kind of client project. And I'm just really curious, actually, how did you guys get started? What's the story behind Collective Works? How did it begin?
Thank you, Ryan. Well, we started up in about 2012. So at the time, I was essentially working as a freelance graphic designer and also as a DJ in my spare time. And I'd been working prior to that at Grimshaw for about 5 years. I'd done my Part 3 there and become fully qualified. I left the firm to join Architecture for Humanity, the London chapter, in 2010. And it was through my work at the London chapter of Architecture for Humanity, and also I was volunteering there, and then I was DJing on the side, and I was doing some graphic design for some friends of mine to get by. And all through this time, I kept getting approached by some of the people in my network to say, do you want to... we've got a residential extension that we need to do. Maybe you'd be interested in doing that. So eventually, I said to myself, well, I've done a couple of fee proposals. I've tried to do these pitches for these residential jobs, but I'm not really that confident in doing the numbers. I've read a lot. I've done my Part 3, so I've got some experience in how to do fees and everything else. But it's much easier when there's two heads involved, because there's an awful lot to think about. And so I actually approached Kazama Hussain, who I'd worked with prior at Grimshaw, and I knew him through Grimshaw, and also he used to work for Habitat for Humanity, and so we'd done volunteering projects and pro bono projects together. We had this background, and I found out that he'd left the firm and he was actually looking for some other work. So we sort of sat together one day on a bench in East London and just said, I've got this client who's come in the door, and he'd seen some of my graphic design work and wanted me to help him design a restaurant. He was quite a rich client. He seemed like quite an interesting guy. And so we wrote a fee proposal. We sat down together. We took about half a day to kind of understand the fees. And I immediately found relief through having someone to bounce ideas off and someone to get some sort of input from. And eventually we submitted the fee proposal to Mario, and Mario sadly didn't take the bait and didn't want us to work with him on that. So I think he went straight to a contractor in the end. But the seed was planted, and we'd obviously been together, and it was only about a week later that Kazama sort of got back in touch and said, well, I quite enjoyed doing that, and whilst we may not have won that first job, maybe we should get together. So that was 2012, and we sort of started on the route of saying, okay, let's build a practice around our experience and around the people we are at the time. So there was an input of voluntary and pro bono work. There was an understanding that we need to work flexibly. There was a lot of work that I was doing in graphic design and in other disciplines at the time, as well as some consultancy work. So I said, let's build a practice around these features and see how we get on.
Brilliant. And what was the first project that you won?
So the first was for a friend, an Italian friend, Giovanna, who actually, again, I was a client of hers as a DJ primarily. She then needed a roof terrace for a house up in Holloway. And so we delivered that shortly after inception and had a great time. It was tiny, 6 square meters, but we invested quite a lot of time in detailing the handrails and detailing the timber decking and getting it as nice as we could do. We got planning for it. It did need planning. And so, yeah, that gave us a good chance to set up all the title blocks. Other than that, we've been doing a handful of competitions. I'd been doing monthly graphic design work. So we had a sort of a stream of work, but that was our first sort of paid architectural project. And so we kind of started working on that. We also then managed to pick up our largest commission, I think 2013 at the time, was a bar up in Kilburn. So I'd been working with a couple of friends in a bar in Islington. They eventually sold that site and said, let's buy this 5-story building up in Kilburn. Let's redevelop that into a duplex, a 2-bed flat, and the bar downstairs will be completely refurbished and extended. So that was the bigger project. Again, it came through the network of people that I already knew. And what we found with that was that was going to be at least a 6 or 8 month project. We could see from the start that there was plenty of work to do. There was a contentious planning application involved. There was some local pressure on it, and there was a lot of kind of, just interesting things to get through. There's obviously the hospitality design. The client was relatively inexperienced. They'd opened a few bars before, but they'd never actually redeveloped an entire building, and they didn't have experience of residential. So working with them gave us the confidence at the time to say to Kazema, who was working 3 days at the time at another practice, to leave his job and to come and join us full time. So up to then, for I think the first 18 months, both the partners were working in part-time positions.
Right, okay.
So that job helped launch us, and again, it came through a network of people that I'd known previously. And then we carried on. And at this point, it's probably worth introducing Siri, who'd known Kazema through Rogers, their previous practice. And actually also came into the network to work with us on a small job out in Hadley in Essex, and impressed us with her sort of design skills, drawing skills, and ability to kind of work with new clients. And she had an existing client base, having run her own practice, Studio Siri Zanelli, for many years. So we approached Siri, and before we knew it, she'd brought us another large job. So I'll hand over to her and let her explain what it was like to get involved.
Yeah, Siri, how did you get involved with Collective Works?
Well, I think I started off working as self-employed in and around 2 maternity leaves. And from having worked with Kazema before, I think he actually gave me a ring when you were doing some of your early fee proposals and asked some advice, because I just threw myself into working independently after I left big practices.
Right.
And I realized at one point, I think I got a big job and thought that this is a good client. I can't take this on my own. And I'll get Kazema and Alasdair to be involved. I even think my PI wasn't big enough. And I think I just had a baby and wasn't up for paying more. Yeah. So I just thought, okay, now I've got a big job. Do you guys want to do this together? That's after we had done some residential work together. I think I also came to the realization that I actually like working with people and not alone. And it is about 2 years ago now, I think, that they asked me to join the company as a partner, not just as a freelancer working now and then together on certain projects. And I said yes. In hindsight, I realized that I didn't really understand the implications of that. But it's definitely, I think, for me, it's much easier to grow a business when you are together. Yeah. And it's much easier to be ambitious on behalf of us rather than me. So for me, when bigger clients come, and I would be perhaps hesitant if it was only me alone, I'm now, I guess, I've got the ability to be much more confident and say, oh yeah, we can definitely do this. Because I'm thinking, well, if I can't, I'm sure Alasdair Kazema knows how to do this.
That's quite interesting, actually, that you've actually had that experience of working in a large corporate practice, then working by yourself, and now working in a team. Yeah. And you can really see how powerful it is having, other founders, other partners there working with you that just sort of eases that kind of
definitely
anxiety and stress of
yeah. No, it's much better to, I guess it depends on how people like to operate, but it's much better to be together. There's so many things you need to discuss and assess, and you know, there's joys and there's worries, and it's always better to be
yeah. And this is what I really love about you guys. The sort of ethos of Collective Works is this sort of extended network, like an extended family of designers and creative people that you can draw on resources, and, you know, have people, you know, kind of basically make a kind of bespoke team for whatever project that a client has. How has that sort of evolved, or how did that as an idea come about?
I'll give it to you.
As you understood from certainly my story and Siri's story, and you know, you get the background of Kazema's story that he was working part time. The whole practice was built on people who needed flexibility in their career because of other interests, whether that be working for a charity, having children, working part time at another practice, doing graphic design, being a DJ. All of these things made part of the practice, made the practice feasible in the first couple of years, and so we felt almost a duty to give that back and to make sure that anybody who wanted to get experience of running a small practice and who wanted to learn what we'd learned through this process could get involved. So we reached out to a handful of people who we knew were in bigger practices or were in smaller practices, or who had any sort of flexibility and the need to join us, and said, you know, if you guys have got interest in doing a small residential project or doing a design review on this temporary structure or doing some work for us, please come and get involved with our network. And we grew the network quite quickly to about 10 people who all get a regular newsletter, who come to our events, and who help us out on projects when the time allows and when they've got the capacity to do so. We believe that that's a good way to work for us, because it does give us the agility to have a large team when we need it, and also to have a sort of a low overhead at times. That's how we've developed that. Now we're trying to sort of further grow and empower the network by saying that anybody in the network who actually brings us work, so if someone at a larger practice or at a smaller practice or otherwise has got a project for their neighbour, or a project like Siri that is slightly too big for her to execute alone, then they can bring it through the company, and we'll actually give them half the profit that we earn on that job, and we'll allow them to help manage the job, even though they don't have to do all of it themselves. So it helps us to grow the practice organically by not only relying on the three partners as the source of work, but actually relying on a larger network to do so.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really good. And how do you find that your clients enjoy that kind of ethos? And
we've certainly had positive feedback from our clients in terms of meeting a wide team and being surprised that they do get so many heads and so many ideas on a project.
Yeah,
we'll usually at the start of any hospitality or cultural larger project where the ideas are really, really relevant beyond a certain scale, we'll start each project with basically a design hack. So we'll get 6 or 8 people into the room who might be, you know, some of them might be timber specialists, some of them might be structural engineers, some of them might be temporary buildings specialists, some of them might be lightweight structures, that kind of thing. Some of them might be graphic designers. We do rely on graphic designers in the network, and we like to get their input on architectural and design projects. And we get them involved. So we have a sort of a 4-hour session. It's often on weekends. We start with a very quick brief. We get everyone to sketch and present, and then we wrap those ideas up, and then we present those back to the client so that they can see that there's been a huge diversity of input on the project. It hasn't just been one person's vision on what might happen. It's been a whole group of ideas. Siri has another point on this.
But I also think that for quite a bit, some of our clients, it's very important for them to know that the projects are led by one of the partners.
Yeah.
Because there is a certain, to know that it's one of us with our experience that is leading the job, and we're not giving their projects to, you know, freelancers that are not with us regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. And what would you say is the sort of the key ingredient to having a sort of network like this, or having a company structure like this work?
I think we are realizing that we need to keep in touch with people regularly, so that they stay in touch with us. So we send out newsletters to the coworkers about every other week, and we try to host a variety of events. We actually had our first company trip abroad last summer, which was great. But I guess because we don't meet in the studio every day, like in a normal or traditional office, we need to work a bit harder on doing social events, opportunities to meet and discuss. So we like this month we all went, or some of us went to the Barbican exhibition together and a lecture together, and then to the pub afterwards to have a chat. We have design reviews, as Alasdair mentioned, and we've even now just recently started a book club, perhaps, which is then one of the co-workers suggest, hey, should we do a book club together, make a reading list, and then I guess we'll meet up. And so it's a mix between social and architectural discussions to keep people engaged.
And what have you found has been, running a company like this, sort of your biggest obstacles in terms of expansion and growing? Because it sounds like quite a really great way of, you're kind of very committed to relationships and networking and to expanding that, and that's a great way of bringing in new clients. What have you found have been the sort of the biggest challenges over the last 4 years in growing the company?
I'll come to that. First of all, I've just got to give a shout out to WhatsApp for for actually being a very good way. We ummed and ahed about using a handful of online collaboration platforms with Slack and all the others that are on the marketplace, but we quickly found that the one
WhatsApp is the best.
Most people that most of the people in our network would actually use WhatsApp. So we now have an active WhatsApp group. I think some people mute it because it does get a bit busy, but there's 20 or so voices on there every couple of weeks just chipping in about things that they're going to see, things that they're going to do, feedback to the company, things that they've seen about us, and other ideas that they have. So we do that turned out to be the easiest method of just keeping this loose networking communication. We might look at more complicated solutions in the future. We've got in terms of actual project management, we use Teamwork, which is working quite well for the bigger, more complex projects, but for general chit chat, it's all WhatsApp at the moment.
So would you say it's almost like a kind of like ethereal type of company, almost like where you're not actually all based in the same place, but it's...
I mean, our bookkeeper Ryan's over in San Francisco. Co-worker Eric is in Ireland running a business. Burkhard, who we work with on competitions, is based in Munich. We have a handful of people all around the place. That we're not strictly international. We're probably 80%, 90% London based, but we don't shy away from people. Again, for that diversity of voices, which we believe in.
That's amazing.
In terms of the challenges and I guess if I had to sort of single out something that has helped us grow and that probably prevented us growing early on, it is about understanding personalities within the business. Because we all come through architecture school with a very inherent view on how we best operate and how we're an all-rounder and how we do operate in certain ways. And then we very quickly start working with each other without really assessing what personality types people have. So late last summer, there was certainly some pressure on the company. We're turning 5 this year. There's a lot of pressure on growth and on results and on doing the right work well. And we were finding ourselves as the 3 partners, we were arguing too often, over the most basic things, which when it all settled down, we all agreed on. It wasn't like we had a different opinion on things. It was just taking us a long time to get to that opinion. So we actually hired a communications coach, a guy called Simon North, who took us through an exercise just before Christmas, which involved a handful of personality tests, which you'll be familiar with, Myers-Briggs, and then some other versions of that. And also some more exploratory exercises around, what's your end game? When are you leaving this business? What does your 70-year-old self think of the years that you were in this business? Do some forecasting, do some really long-term thinking. And then he presented the results of that back to us in a session, like I say, just before Christmas. And it was quite fascinating because we quickly discovered that our personality types were basically on 3 very different sides of the spectrum. Some of us were very logistical and very kind of, I don't remember all the personality types themselves.
Yeah.
But he basically laughed at us and said, you guys appear to be as far apart on the personality spectrum as you can get. And Siri, happily, you're in the middle. So it confirmed a few of the things that we knew about working together being a challenge.
Yeah.
But it also helped us to accept what we're good at doing and what we should focus on. So we've actually restructured the business to a certain extent to take advantage of those benefits and make sure that each of us play to our strengths rather than all trying to do everything all the time, which is not going to help anybody. I don't know if Siri wants to talk more on that kind of that process.
Yeah, if you've got it.
Well, I guess when we met with the communications coach, it was very much one of those days where I did not know what to expect and whether we were actually we'd quarreled too much. And that was, of course, a massive waste of time. So, we tried to come up with something that might help us. But it really did. And it was a great day. I think we all managed to understand ourselves better and therefore accept our own strengths and weaknesses, and therefore maybe more easily give away tasks that we're now realizing we're not good at, and we don't really have to struggle to become that good at. Someone else will do it much quicker than us anyway. And also understand how the other partners operate. So when we disagree, now I think I've got a better idea of why Kuzama and Alasdair will argue the way they do, which makes the discussion much easier when you can understand from why people think in a certain way. Then the discussion we resolve issues much quicker now. So I think it's helped the business properly.
And it's really fascinating, this element of communication, because again, this is the type of stuff that we don't get taught in architecture schools, and our education almost sets us up to be not very good at communicating in groups because we've spent such a long time training to be architects and typically working by ourselves. Working on projects alone.
Ironically, I think you can do small scale residential work on your own, but very quickly you hit a limit to the type of projects that you can do alone. So to work with other people in a company or employees or freelancers as we do, you need to be communicating efficiently. If not, you don't get things done. So I think I think it's something that I would recommend to other, regardless of the business type, but I think it's something that other industries realize perhaps quicker than architecture. I've worked a long time in architecture. I've never heard of anyone else doing this. Maybe they do, maybe they don't talk about it, but I think other industries are much better at trying to venture into these type of assessing people on personality types or strengths and weaknesses. Well, we only look at the portfolio. And that doesn't say very much about how you operate as an architect.
Yes, exactly. It's a very limited view of what somebody can actually do in a lot of aspects. There are the technical skills, but what happens when you're placed inside a team? And how do you work? And how do you find that this sort of this kind of putting kind of communication and relationships at the heart of your company? How does that work with your clients as well in terms of gaining new work? And because I know you were saying how you started your company was, you really maximized your existing networks, and you've actually found enough work out of your existing network to kind of keep you going for. You already knew the clients essentially.
I think it's made us realize exactly. Sometimes it's realizing that this is not luck. It's a personality trait that you can try to benefit more from. So for me, for example, I never thought that I was good at selling anything. But then I realized that actually I do get a lot of clients to come into the business, and that I should do more of that. And for me, some of that is just socializing and meeting people. It's networking, but I never saw it as networking. But now that I think now realizing that it is a strength to go out, meet people, talk to people, get them be interested in what they do, see how that can benefit us, how we can help people, that you can try to be more than systematic about things. So it is about trying to utilize then our own networks further or grow them in whichever walk of life you are. Like I just said to Alasdair, I wish I was DJing. That sounds cool. I'm not. I have picked up quite a few clients in the school gate because that's where I hang out now in the afternoons. So, but that's my network. Yeah. And of course there's people everywhere. So there's always a job lurking.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a different mindset, right? And like you said, you never saw yourself as being a salesperson or someone who was selling. And actually, perhaps, when we come out of architecture school, we don't really know what selling. We've got an idea of what we think selling is, but actually, selling is just. And
selling is almost like a negative word.
Exactly.
Which you don't see yourself. You imagine this person with a suitcase knocking on the door.
Exactly. And selling Hoovers or whatever.
Exactly. But I think now it's more. You realize that a lot of clients, they also just want to work with people that they trust and like, because work is work and work is more pleasurable if you deal with people that you enjoy dealing with. So it's in some instances it's as simple as that people, of course, sometimes you have to compete, do pitches, and you try to be best, or we try to avoid only competing on price because that's not pleasurable. But often people aren't necessarily looking for the ultimate deal. They're also looking for someone that they would enjoy doing a project with. Yeah.
And that's really interesting. How do you avoid competing on price?
Yeah, we discuss that constantly. No, I think...
And what I'm getting is that it's kind of you're putting the emphasis on the relationship as opposed to...
Yeah, I think so. We try to... I think when you start off, and when I look back at the first planning applications and extensions I did, I realized some of my clients got an amazing deal, and they probably sit in their rare extension not knowing what a great deal they got. But we all learn from that. And I think now we're getting better at saying that these are our fees, and that's how we have to operate. And we're not interested in, going any lower, but being quite open about what the relationship will be. How many maybe design sessions with a client that will be involved. We send them examples of what they can expect from the process. And it also gets to a point where I guess we're learning that if you have a client that is haggling over very small amounts of fees early in the project, it might be a very difficult process throughout the project.
And do you have a process where, like, if you meet with a client or a potential client early on and you're like, this is not going to work, that you just kind of, you won't work with them, or?
We have learned that, especially for a lot of...
When do you know to walk away?
Yeah, for a lot of domestic clients, we've learned that it's good to table fees quite quickly. And that's one of the reasons why we built the architect quote tool. Right. Because we found out that we spent a lot of time doing fee proposals, very detailed, for clients that had no idea what to expect in terms of fees. Got it. And this is London. You can get a planning application for £750. Yeah. We are not interested in competing with those. And we have to we needed to present that to clients quite early. Yeah. There are also people in London that do planning applications for £10,000. We can compete with those. So I think it's about being honest about where you are. Yeah. And so in order to not spend too much time on initial site visits, long conversations, we needed to table fees for, the first REBA stages quite quickly to try to find out whether it matched the client's expectations.
And so what was the app that you developed, the Architect Quote? What does that do exactly?
I'll hand over to you, Alasdair.
Thank you. We as Siri says, we realised through probably 50 or 60 of these fee proposals that we'd done in a short period of time that actually we're having the same discussions, and all architects working in domestic sector will know that you basically need to find out if they have an existing survey, if they're looking at an extension, a refurb, or a new build, and then, what kind of assistance they want, whether they want help on site with the builders, whether they know a builder, whether, those questions we kind of tabulate and said, right, well, there's 10 questions here. Let's make a knowledge tree. So let's basically figure out answers to those 10 questions that we can then base fees on, and that we can help them, guide them through the process a little bit. Yeah. So we mocked up the site. We went and spoke to our web developers. We did some of the graphic design ourselves. And we essentially launched it about a month ago. And so we've been sending it to our new clients and saying, right, here, answer these 10 questions. And at the end of it, you'll get an immediate quote. There's no strings attached. There's no email addresses to be entered. It's just all there available. and that's been, that's a launch for us to see how we can increase transparency around our fees so that we get fewer people coming in the front door saying, "Oh, you can't do that for £200 or £400," or So it's about making people aware of the amount of time it takes an architect to properly design your home and to properly extend and properly look at your briefs and to make sure it's all safe. So that was the aim of that project.
And is it an app that like any other architects can use, or is it purely just based for your?
So we've put it out there as our practice. So once you get to the end of the stages, it's explained that the quote you've received is from Collective Works, and you can come and have a look at our work. And if you're happy with that, you can obviously clearly work with us. You can share the quote with other people. You can tell your partner about it. You can explain to people that this architect's giving you this quote. You can also share it with other architects. We aren't precious about it. We see the platform as a conversation about fees and how much it costs to really do proper good residential work in London. If other architects feel that those fees are too low or that those fees are too high, we'd love to have a discussion. We'd love to offer you place on the platform. We don't really want to undercut or to overcut or to get into that competitive nature. We just want to say everyone is struggling with fees to a certain extent. Let's make the conversation a bit more open. Let's make information accessible.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Because Emma, our other business partner, has just arrived, but I'm not sure if he'll be joining us in this chat. So yeah, to summarise, it's about transparency of fees in the marketplace, which we think is a good thing, because prior to that, you were, if you're Googling how much an architect costs, you're quickly ending up on Mumsnet, which is a huge knowledge community about various things, but it wasn't giving very many
and it's like
examples.
Kind of endless comments about this is my mate, they've done this. You can
and so the knowledge, the information wasn't there. So we said let's set this up and see how it goes. So that's being iterated. We're working with some product developers to see where that goes next to get more user testing done. It's an ongoing project in the practice, it's really about transparency and also talking to other people about fees.
I even found that I've given it to friends that work in larger practices, maybe get one of those phone calls from their relatives or network asking for some domestic work, and then if they then have been working on commercial projects, they actually don't even know what to charge. As an architect, architects don't know what architects charge, because I think it's like fees in architecture is this big mystery that no one dares to talk about. So I've sent them, the webpage saying, well, this is what we would charge. Just use it for what it's worth. And the feedback generally has been, okay, this is really interesting because it puts it all into stages. And of course people can take the view that we would charge more or we would charge less, but at least we've put it out there. And I think it should be just like we all know that a hairdresser can charge, I'm sure, like 150 or 25 for a cut. And the customers can choose to go wherever they want. Yeah. But in architecture, what an architect charges to do, for example, a rear extension, it's hardly talked about. Why not?
Yeah. No, exactly. And so what you guys are celebrating your 5th anniversary this year, is that correct? So what's next?
Well, we're having I guess first things first at the anniversary is to have our AGM. We have not a public AGM, but we have an internal AGM. So we invite all the co-workers into the office to come and learn about what's been going on that year, everything that they missed in the WhatsApp group or the newsletters. And we operate with complete internal transparency. So everybody in the company knows our turnover, knows what everyone's being paid. We've all got agreed rates. So there's no mysteries there. And it's a kind of an open and frank discussion about how the company's doing and what we want to do for the following year. So that's internally what we're doing. And then externally, we're going out and, Siri's probably going to talk about her project, I think.
My big Oslo project. Yeah, I think, we are getting more work for developers.
Right.
Which is good for our turnover and, projections. I think we very much enjoy working for homeowners, domestic work, which of course it's enjoyable. But we are realizing that we need bigger jobs that are with us for a longer time and with bigger budgets to actually plan properly for the future. So I think we're now really looking at a good combination of work for small and large scale, the professional clients, in combination with domestic work. And that also makes it possible for us to do some pro bono work, which we really enjoy doing. So we've set ourselves a target of spending 1% of turnover a year on pro bono work. We're giving it to charities, but this year we've been involved in 3 different not-for-profit projects, which we then, when some of our co-workers work on those projects, their salaries come out of that pro bono pot, which allows us to be involved with projects that wouldn't have happened for us if we didn't do them for free, simply because the clients couldn't afford architectural services.
Yeah.
So we have a little pavilion for a nursery in Islington on site at the moment. It's the slowest site progress, but that's how it is when it's all supposed to be built by volunteers. And we've designed an outdoor classroom for a school in Highgate, and we just also started looking at the library interior for them. So the goal is to have some bigger client that will then allow us to have a more robust economy, so we can still keep doing smaller pro bono work as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, guys. That was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I'd love to have this conversation with you guys again maybe in a year's time and see how the practice is expanded. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And excellent. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
And that is a wrap. Thank you for listening today. If you're looking for more time, freedom, impact, and income as an architect, get instant access to my free 4-part architect profit map by visiting freearchitectgift.com. Today's podcast is sponsored by AIA Advantage partner BQE Software, the makers of ArchiOffice. ArchiOffice is the only office and project management software designed specifically for architects. It helps you manage people and projects while you focus on designing great architecture. So whether you're working remotely or on-site, ArchiOffice allows you to monitor the status of your projects and tasks and send out invoices in an accurate and timely manner. Get your fully functional 15-day trial of ArchiOffice by going to businessofarchitecture.com/demo. The views expressed on the show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you conquer the world.